Washington edition of News Channel 8.
8:46 your time right now, and double suicide bombings in Kabul this week left dozens dead, including 10 journalists targeted when they responded to the first explosion. The attacks draw attention to the intense dangers journalists face in these combat zones, which today's guest knows all too well. Carmen Gentile was struck by a rocket-propelled grenade in Afghanistan back in 2010, shattering his face and blinding him in one eye. He documents his survival story in a new book, Blindsided by the Taliban, a journalist's story of war, trauma, love, and loss. So, Carmen, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, you've come a long way. This happened back in 2010.
Correct.
And you said that you wrote this book about 4 years later.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when you're writing this book after what you had gone through, is it therapeutic? Is it rewarding? What are you getting at?
You know, I thought it would be the ultimate catharsis to have the opportunity to sit down and tell this whole story.
Yeah.
That was my intention at first. I soon thereafter realized that that wasn't going to heal all my woes.
Right.
That's something that I just have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And also, I realized, as I chronicle in the course of the book, that though I went through something very difficult, it's nothing in comparison to what people are dealing with every single day in places that I cover. For example, what just happened in Kabul a couple days ago, affecting many of my friends and colleagues that are on the ground there. They have family that is subject to this kind of violence every single day. So I'm very fortunate, and in many ways I have no room to complain.
Let's talk about what happened, because we're seeing footage here of you recovering in the hospital. Let's talk about what happened that day. Was it September 9th?
Correct, September 9th, 2010. I was embedded with U.S. forces near the Pakistani border, and we were walking through a small village in a remote part of a province called Kunar. And I was also shooting video at the time, and I was talking to some young men on the side of the road, and I had my camera trained on them, when all of a sudden their eyes grew very wide, and I heard a whooshing sound from behind me, and I turn around and there's this rocket coming right toward me, and there was little I could do. I was just frozen in the moment, and it clocked me in the side of the head, though it did not detonate, and it immediately blinded me in this eye, and then shattered all these bones in my face. Initially, I was so shocked. I thought,
am I dead?
Am I dead?
Yeah.
Really? I thought, am I dead?
Yeah.
This is it. I dropped to one knee. I didn't lose consciousness, and then somebody asked me, "Are you okay?" And my response was, "No,
right,
no. I just got shot in the head with a rocket that night." And fortunate for me, the quick moving and apt hands of the military took care of me and got me out of that situation.
Well, we do, since you were filming at the time this happened, we do have that video, if we can go ahead and show it to people, and then we'll talk about what it's like watching this back.
Sure.
So let's take a listen to this.
No.
Hey.
No.
Hey, are you okay?
No.
Yeah, so that was the group of young men that you said you were talking to. You also, I've done some research, you said that when you were talking to them, it didn't feel right. Something felt wrong. And you said kids were there initially.
Right, there were kids. Usually a telltale sign when you walk into one of these villages is if the kids are friendly, you could be in it's usually okay. But when you notice that the kids are starting to scatter, that's when you know something's was gonna happen. And I started getting that hinky vibe when I didn't see any young kids around.
Yeah.
And lo
Sure
and behold,
enough, yeah.
That's what happened.
When you watch that back, what's it like for you?
You know, I've only watched the entire video once.
Okay.
And it's something that I chronicle in my book, that experience. In fact, I knew it was on my camera. I thought I had caught it, and I didn't know for months, in fact, that whether or not I had the full incident, and it sat in my camera until I worked up the gumption to have a friend go over it with me, and oof, that was rough.
Yeah, I bet. Okay, so you are married now
Correct.
to a Croatian journalist.
You're
you
right.
are based in Croatia. You have a daughter.
Correct.
I have to ask you, though, you are still kind of an adrenaline junkie, and you are still a journalist chronicling the war overseas in the Middle East.
Correct.
What's What made you say, you know, this is what I want to do even after this accident?
I'm not really good at doing anything else, I think. Frankly, I considered whether or not my career would move toward more of an inside behind the desk role. It's something I actually think about moments after I'm hurt.
Yeah.
And whether or not I would be suited for that, and immediately I knew I wouldn't.
Wow.
I've had the inside job. I worked here in Washington.
Right.
Years and years ago.
Found it boring.
It just didn't suit me.
Yeah,
I wasn't a good fit, and you know, I knew my career wasn't gonna flourish in that environment. So I have to be outside. I'm an outside dog, not an inside dog.
I hear you. I know the feeling. All right. Well, the book is Blindsided by the Taliban, a journalist's story of war, trauma, love, and loss. I suggest you read it. Carmen Gentile, thank you so much for being here.
Appreciate it.
Safe travels back to Croatia and back to your reporting.
Thank you very much.
Altria, over to you.
All right, at 8:52, we are celebrating National Brothers